Alright everyone, yesterday I got a notification from Louder with Crowder, Steven Crowder's channel actually. I wanted to weigh in on that. It's funny because, getting a notification is as scarce as hen's teeth now if it's for a channel that's loosely political. He does mainly funny satire. Like, his show is more about comedy and satire in a more pure sense, and it just happens to be sometimes political. Like when he goes after Cenk from the Young Turks, and I think that he retired that character, which is a sin. One of the funniest things he ever did was when he walked into Cenk's panel there at some conference. He had like 50 people maybe in there. It was a snooze fest. And then he starts pretending to be Cenk, and, everyone was confused and didn't know what was going on. That was pretty good. At the time, I was like, well, the optics of this maybe not great politically, although I can understand it is fucking hilarious, which is true. But apparently he got hit by a copyright strike, and so now he's like, the show might be hazarded and stuff. Now, he was wondering, because apparently it was multiple generated claims on one video. To answer the question, long story short, that counts as one strike, not as multiple strikes. So his channel right now is still there. The problem is that YouTube has made it fairly clear at this point that it treats certain classes of people differently. The fact that Crowder has nearly 4 fucking million subscribers is not going to impress them. Because they're like, well, ultimately if he says one wrong thing, all that has to happen is a couple of advertisers contact YouTube, put pressure on them, and they will begin looking for a reason to demote the content. Further, if groups of vigilante craptivists then go after the content, find something to bitch about, they'll use that as an excuse to issue more strikes. What happens is you get wounded once, the blood enters the water, the sharks start circling. We've seen this among some of the far-left outrage mobs. Admittedly, we have, among some people on the right as well, and they jump all over each other, and basically what it's done is strangulate discourse. What people should be doing is they should be unifying under a message of non-censorship. Basically, the tech firms, they're U.S. firms, they should respect the basic rudiments of the First Amendment. There was no problem to begin with the way YouTube and these sites worked 5 years ago. In fact, it was basically perfect. They've created the problems that are now occurring. They created them themselves by design, largely spurred on by people who hated these big tech platforms to begin with. The legacy media fucking hated YouTube until a couple years ago. They hated them because they wouldn't give them deference. They're like, what do you want us to do? People make a channel, they put on content. We're not responsible for the fact that your views suck. We're not responsible for the fact that CNN they can put out literally 100 videos a day and get 10 fucking views, and nobody interacts with it, and all they do is tell them that they suck. Because you do suck. And so YouTube became bigger than all these sites. Then they decided to go after the advertisers, and that's really why we have the problems we have today. Now, do I think this was targeted? No, probably not. But it does illustrate a problem on YouTube, which is that no deference is given to larger creators, people who have hundreds of thousands, millions of subscribers. They are a lightning rod for being attacked by spurious copyright claims, which has happened. There's a reason I don't put any third-party content on my channel anymore. I even got rid of the Radio Werewolf stuff. The music, I'm planning to migrate like the 2 songs that could potentially be copyrighted to the second channel, so that the only music that'll be on the channel is stuff that I've made specifically under the auspices of working with other independent musicians, like Gifts Ungiven or some of these others, or something like that. I don't want the third-party content, but if he's going to be a satirist, if he's going to satirize news segments, comedy bits, people like Cenk or whatever, of course, yeah, necessarily, there's going to be third-party content. Now, under fair use, it's perfectly acceptable. But the problem is YouTube favors the person making the claim almost inevitably. There's a big problem. And someone like Crowder, again, you've got these people with huge audiences that necessarily, they're going to have large numbers of people that hate them. They'll troll the content, they'll try to file false claims, they'll try to hack accounts, they'll do whatever they can to try to stop people. They become obsessed with it, craptivists. And YouTube has created a system in which they're favored. YouTube has changed its rules over the last couple of years to favor the people making bad faith claims. They don't even get in trouble when they're making them. Like if you go through someone's videos, someone goes through your videos and starts flagging everything, and the flags are like totally off the wall, they're not real. That person doesn't seem to ever lose their account, and if they do, there's really nothing impeding them from just making a new one if they do. Meanwhile, the content creator themselves, they can be totally fucked. You'd think of one false claim, it can take days to get it removed. If you're a streamer and you have a claim on your channel and you can't live stream, there goes your livelihood for a few days, maybe a week. Or a bunch of your videos get taken down. They get put into limited state. They get put in restricted mode. The mere fact that they've been flagged by some partisan individual keeps them from getting ad revenue. And so you've got all this shit. He's got his mug club, so I suppose, he can get by on merchandise, but, he's he's got an actual staff. It's not just Crowder, too. It's all these other people who get their fucking paycheck signed, potentially getting impeded as well. From the night janitor to the accountant, everyone else suffers if their show goes down. I happen to think he's a funny dude. I don't agree with all of his beliefs, but I mean, I think that he's hilarious. And that's basically the way it is with all content creators. Like, I haven't met any particular... I think the closest thing, ironically enough, similar stuff, I think the closest thing would be maybe Razor Fist, as far as somebody whose views I almost universally agree with. Although some of it, like, he's more into gaming, so I guess that's a difference. I like Fallout 4. I don't think that he particularly likes it, so I guess that's a difference, too. I know my opinion's unpopular on that end, which I find hilarious. Come on, dude. It's fun to build a bunch of turrets and then invite ghouls to attack your settlement. It's a good idea. You use console commands, generate a horde of enemies and just have fun. But no, I mean, he is hazarded by a false copyright claim. I don't know if copyright claims restrict you from streaming. Content claims do. You get one. I think they've changed it now so that the first strike you get is just a warning. And that's, I guess, but the thing is, they haven't even made it clear. Here's another thing. YouTube changes its strikes policy, right? Used to be 3 strikes, you're out, and there was wiggle room for larger creators. Now it seems like they only give you wiggle room if you're like a left-wing creator. Let's face it, there is a bias there. Let's quite clearly, if we look at who's been banned, there's definitely a bias. Or not a left-wing bias, but an authoritarian, lame establishment bias. Yeah, you don't have to worry about Glenn Beck losing his presence, let's just say that. It's very funny. Used to be that you got 3 strikes and you're out. Now there's an extra 4th strike you can get only once. But they haven't even determined, like, if you fight that, if you appeal it and it goes away, do you get that extra strike again? Or is it just literally a one-time thing? Because with all the false positives, like, I've had twice now I've had videos taken down by the algorithm. And I appeal them and it gets restored, but, it takes several days to do that, and it's like you're in this waiting period. It's like, if my channel gets attacked now, somebody could lock it down. Even if the appeal is successful, it's like it could be a huge inconvenience at the very least. It's just problematic. The way in which they've decided to go around business, you've got people who've had presences on YouTube for years and years, in some cases upwards of a decade, and they're being treated like trash in favor of Jimmy Kimmel and CNN and scumbags like that, basically. The priority creator crowd. The funny part is someone like Crowder or Paul Joseph Watson, Molyneux, any of the larger, Sargon, any of the larger, like, alt-political or satirical commentators, they get so much more engagement than, like, a CNN that can have 10 times the subscriber total. You get these major news... You go to CNN's YouTube page sometime and see what their... Look at the number of subscribers they have. Now see what the view count is and the engagement on the videos, where they allow comments and ratings at all, which is, like, getting more and more scarce. They don't like the idea of commenting toxic comment areas. I have no doubt, by the way, that in due time they're going to call for commenting to be restricted or removed entirely off the platform. Of course they will, and they'll use some bullshit excuse like extremists are congregating in certain YouTube users' comments areas. They should have limited commenting, and they should have YouTube should have special moderators weed through their comments and ban people. They'll probably do that. It'll be some dystopian bullshit prefaced on Save the Children. We think of decency. It'll sound exactly like what they said back in the 50s about, like, preventing people from listening to Elvis too much. Think of your daughters getting wet and cummy watching Elvis's hips swing around. We must burn these albums. Ed Sullivan must be hanged. Something like that. It's basically the same fucking shit. That's about all. Peace out.